Chapter 8. The Collapse That Called Me Home. We accept the love we think we deserve. Stephen Chbosky. This quote marks the beginning of the chapter, serving as a reminder that seeking residence begins by leaving the environment of survival behind. When your sense of self-worth was shaped by pain, even suffering can feel like devotion. We stay when we hurt because the loop knows our name, because our bodies remember the terrain of our emotional hunger. And somewhere deep inside, the pain feels like home. This is for those who once begged to be chosen and now simply choose themselves. Lena. The key turned in the lock, the familiar scrape echoing the too quiet apartment. Lena braced herself. She didn't leave. The thought, once smooth almost every day now, surfaced again as she heard David's weary sigh from the hallway. She wasn't weak for staying as long as she did. She had faced storms that might have broken others. Yet, because she couldn't quite describe the emptiness that consumed her from within, it felt like a quiet, insidious decay. There was no violence, no shattered plates, no cruel words etched into the furniture, no betrayal. There was no telltale perfume on his collar, no late-night texts lighting up his phone, no chaos enough to justify an exit, to rip the bandage of their shared life. Just this, a slow, relentless starvation of the soul, a suffocation by degrees. He walked in. His presence felt like a familiar piece of furniture slightly out of place. "Long day," he murmured, dropping his bag. He was kind sometimes. He'd bring her tea when she had a cold and remember her mother's birthday. But his kindness was lukewarm tea, present, bland, never warm enough to truly comfort, never cold enough to decisively discard. It was an offering made from duty, a checkbox ticked on the list of husband, not a burning ember of devotion. She told herself it was enough for years. "Did you eat?" she asked, her voice carefully modulated, a soft chime in the quiet. "Grabbed something," he replied, already heading for the armchair, the remote control his target. He offered his presence as if it were a duty fulfilled. She watched him sink into the worn leather, the blue glow of the television flickering across his impassive face. She remembered when that profile had stirred something deep within her. Now it was just there. She had made herself smaller over the years, tentative in her demands, sweeter in her disappointments. She'd become an expert in emotional acrobatics, anticipating his needs before they formed, ignoring the knowing needs of her own. She'd learned the precise angle to hold her head when kissing him goodnight to avoid his turned cheek, the exact decibel for conversation that wouldn't disturb his reading, and perfecting the art of his comfort. Over the years, he had never asked her what she really wanted or if she were ever truly happy. They had never had one gut laugh together. Every unreturned touch, every conversation that died mid-sentence became a question she held to her own reflection in the bathroom mirror later. Why am I too much and why do I desire things I can't have? She'd demand. tracing the faint lines around her eyes that hadn't been there a decade ago. Why am I not enough? The silence in the steamed up room was her only answer. The loop was cruel, inescapable. She stayed for the hope, the fragile seedling of belief that maybe this weekend, this conversation, the spark would reignite, that he'd see her again. She stayed for history. 12 years. 12 good years. Photographs on the mantelpiece, shared friends, the comfortable groove of shared routines one deep. Wasn't that what something? She stayed because the fear of loneliness was a roaring beast, far louder than the suffocating silence that filled their apartment and the space between them in their shared bed. The unknown abyss of solitude seemed colder, more terrifying than the familiar chill of this half-life. But the price was her aliveness. She felt it leaching away day by day. Her body never truly relaxed, not even when he held her, a stiff, forced embrace that felt more like protocol than passion. Love felt like labor, an exhausting effort to exact crumbs of connection. Desire? It felt like a choreographed dance she'd forgotten the steps to, an obligation rather than a yearning. She was constantly begging for a connection, pouring her heart into a role on a stage where the only audience member was indifferent, distracted, or gone. A theater where no one applauded, no one even seemed to be watching. Tonight, the stillness pressed in heavier than usual. She walked to the window, looking out at the city lights, which were distant yet vibrant. A couple walked hand in hand below, their laughter a sharp, alien sound carried on the night air. She felt a tremor run through her, a seismic shift deep within the permafrost of her resignation. She turned back to the living room. David was engrossed in a sports highlight, the flickering light carving shadows on his face. She walked over, standing before the screen, blocking his view. He looked up. A flicker of annoyance quickly masked the weary patience.